Welcome back, listeners. It's glad to have you join us in here on this lovely day that we've got going on. I've got my windows open. I'm sitting here at my kitchen table. I'm excited to sit back and record. As you know, my name is Cade Curtis, your lovely tour guide on this episode of Learning from Friends. So it's glad to have you back in. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're back for multiple times I think we're on 40 plus episodes here, about to hit 50. Congratulations. It's really cool to kind of see that you've made it this far. And as you all know, before we get going into our episodes, we have my mom's quote of the day. Mom, take it away.
I hope you understand how big it is that you're still here, still learning, still making mistakes, and figuring it all out as you go. In case you need to hear it, you are a big deal. You, just you, living your life. Thanks for breathing and stuff. Nana Hoffman.
Thank you, Mom, for that wonderful quote. It's always great to hear those from you. You provide such great wisdom before going into any episode. So, Mom, thank you. My good friend Daniel is on the autism spectrum, and he does a really good job of sitting down and explaining how it can be relatable and understanding for the disability that he has. And so, before any further ado, Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Cade. Thank you.
It's so glad that you were able to finally make this work, because sometimes with episodes, it may take us 3 months to sit down, 6 months to get down. It's so glad that we got this worked out.
Yeah,
today.
we have lives and we're busy, so I no problem. I love hanging around you, and I love being here. So
yeah. And how do we know each other? We're each going to share a story.
We actually met in college. Actually, I remember I pretty much got into college and had no friends, and I think we had met. If I'm remembering correctly, we were talking about the president or something, and we'd gotten into like a political discussion about something, and then we just connected and went on from there.
We had a newspaper, I can't remember what the Georgia Highlands newspaper was called, but there was like some article, and I'm sitting there reading it and discussing it, and you just kind of walk over and sit down, and we just start talking, and then all of a sudden you were gone. Like, I was like, where did he go? And a couple of days later, I found you playing. We had a video game console in one of the side rooms, and you were playing that. And we sat down and I think it was Madden or NCAA.
It was Madden, yeah.
Yeah, and it just kind of picked up from there. And as Bobby, one of our friends, a former guest on the podcast as well, goes, "Cade, you just go around picking up strays." That's not in a mean way of saying that. It's just interesting. If my friends are all over the place.
Well, I've always said you find people, so that's the biggest thing. You find people that I either are lost or just need a friend, stuff like that.
And they find me. I find them, they find me. We create a community of our own on our own accord. You have a family you're born into. I say this all the time on the podcast, but I love saying it because it's a great thing to say, is you were born into a family. That's blood. But you get to choose your other family through your friends. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I feel very blessed that we are now on over a decade that I've got to know you.
Doesn't seem like it, though. It really doesn't.
It really doesn't. Now, Daniel, we'll go with 90%. Maybe we'll go with 92.5. I like that number.
Works.
92.5% of our audience has no clue who you are. If you were sitting down at a computer and you had to write a Wikipedia page summary about yourself for people to kind of pull up and read, what would be some of those highlights that you would want people to know about yourself?
Oh, God. I'm pretty funny. I'm good at impressions. I like to call myself an athletic nerd. Like, I like all the nerdy stuff like Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, all that stuff. But I also can play sports. I can do baseball, football, all that stuff. So I would say just pretty much a jack of all trades.
I love that. It's a very good description about yourself. You playing baseball right now. You're coaching a little league baseball team.
Yeah, and I coached semi-pro football for 6 years. So it's
you just have these gifts for sports and all this lovely knowledge that if I'm lost on something and I go, "Hey, what was the stat from blankety blankety blank from in?" Oh, okay, blah blah blah. Yeah. You'll know it, and that's a fun skill to have. I'm going to jump back a little bit. I jump around all the time. Fine. It's just the nature of the beast. There's going to be a lot of vocabulary and some jargon that we're going to use throughout the episode. Do you have some terms or words that you perhaps want to like outline or define for some people, so you don't have to all of a sudden say like atypical? and you say it like 4 different times and people are like, wait, what does atypical mean? Or like neurotypical kind of idea. Do you want to give any words?
I'll use Aspie, which is short for Asperger's, which basically is referring to a group like Aspies or something like say Aspies is just the group of people with Asperger's in general. And like neurotypicals is like basically people that aren't on the spectrum or that we don't know are on the spectrum. Basically what you'd say in quotations, you're normal people, even though I believe that there is no normal, but
I agree. There is no such thing. We're all weird.
So
we're all different. And that's the whole thing. And I love that. You know, there's so many different politically correct terms that are kind of out there. Do you have a preference of how you like to be addressed?
Just basically like every other person with autism will say, they just want to be treated like any other person. I mean, honestly, like I don't think of it as a disorder. I think of it as an advance in human evolution, an advancement in human evolution, or if you want to get technically an X-Man. So
there you go.
So, but I think I think the human race is evolving, and it's just, this is the beginning stages of the next stage of the evolution of the human race is autism and then being able to see the world different and everything else.
Love it. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions that people do have, and you did a good job of kind of addressing some of that there. But do you have any that you would like to address before going into the episode further?
Pretty much that I don't want to use this term, but that we're retarded, or that we don't understand the world, or that we don't have lives like everybody else does. I mean, we still have things we enjoy and everything else, but just because we don't vocalize it like a neurotypical person would, doesn't mean that we don't care. It's just, we're a little different, and it's just one of those things, and it drives me insane. People come up and baby talk me at 33 years old because they think that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that they don't know what I'm talking about, or they just don't refuse to try to understand me because it's like I'm not making any sense. I know what I'm talking about, but they may not know what they're talking about, what I'm talking about. So
yeah, I hate when someone uses that word, the R word, as I'm going to call it. That fires me up so much. And I go on to a long rant, and I'll pull a kid aside and be like, okay, let's talk. Like, why are you going this range? Why are you using this term? This is the reason why we don't use this. And yeah, it's one of those ones I figure would go away with time, but people can be really cruel. And that's really a problem for me, that we still have that issue today, and it's carried for 100+ years, which is sad.
Yeah.
Now, are there any annoying questions that people ask you about the Autism Spectrum Disorder?
Not really any annoying questions, but usually when people say, "Oh, I know what that is," or "I've dealt with it before," or something like that, and then they'll sit there but then they'll ask you questions about it. It's like, well, you just told me that you know what it is and you know about it, then why are you asking me questions? But then at the same time, I have to realize that not everybody thinks the same way that I do.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to be careful about and be conscious about that. But it's been hard for me doing that because, like I said, we see the world completely different than everybody else. So
that's understandable that everyone views things different, and that's some things that we'll talk about here in a little bit of how our brains can think in all these different forms and fashions. And that's something that's always fascinating. There are several things that I had to learn whenever we first kind of became friends and started going through that we have social cues and social things and way that we speak. And I was like, wait a second, why is he not thinking on this way? Or why am I thinking on that way? And it opened up my mind to several different things that I was not knowledgeable of. One of the things that we spoke about earlier that I just mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast was that you have all this lovely knowledge and understanding of sports. People on the Autism Spectrum Disorder, on, as you mentioned, Asperger's, have kind of like obsessions and large understandings of topics where they focus in on that.
Yeah.
Do you have things that you really say are major focuses for you, or kind of OCD tendencies maybe?
Yeah, a hyper focus is what we call it.
There you go.
A hyper focus. But it started out actually, from where I can remember, was probably, it was around 9 or 10, being able to tell you all the players on the Falcons and the Braves and never even going to a game, being able to tell you all the people in baseball and everything else. And then as I got older, Lord of the Rings came out, and I was able to tell you stuff about the movies and the whole lore and the history and everything else and get completely immersed. And when hyperfocus happens, we get completely 100% immersed into that until we know everything we possibly can about it. And then we move on to the next next topic. So I've got multiple things that I'm hyper-focused, like Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, all the way from sports to almost all the different sports teams, even in sports I don't even watch, like golf. I can tell you about all that. Like it's amazing what I retain most of the time.
That's always what kind of catches me by surprise too, of like, wow, like how does he know that? Like that's so cool. But again, our brains work in different directions and different memories. Do you have any like OCD tendencies that affects your daily behavior, that almost like, do you have to have a certain routine?
When I was younger, I did. I did very well with routine, and sudden change would really bother me. Like, if you don't mind if I go off on just a quick story real quick.
Dude, go for it.
When I never understood why when I would go on trips with my parents or my family that we would take a certain route going to, like, say, the mountains or something. We would take a certain route, and then coming back, we'd take a completely different route, and I would get upset about it. Then as I got older, I realized that going that route up there, I learned landmarks, I learned different ways, the distances between stuff, so I know where we were at. When we take a different route home, it throws me off because I don't know how long it is to get home, how long it is to stuff like that. So I would get upset about it. Or if like somebody would come and tell me we're doing something at the last minute and I don't have time to mentally prepare for it or like be able to think about it. Like if you tell me a couple days ahead of time, that's fine because I can prepare for it. Even now, I still have a little bit of trouble as an adult with like just spontaneous, just out of the blue stuff, but I've been working on it. So
and that's what a lot of skills that we all have to learn to cope with it. Because I have anxiety and depression and PTSD that I deal with all the time, and coping mechanisms and ways to kind of adjust and deal with situations that's part of everyone's life that we kind of go through. But thank you for sharing like an example and a story. Do you mind if I share a story?
Sure, go ahead.
That I have? We were doing my surprise birthday. And I got kidnapped by a couple of my friends, and we were brought to a field, and we did
I remember this.
a capture the flag. And it got to a point in the game where it just went sideways. And we had, one of our friends had a van. I went over, I crunk up the van, people were jumping in it, and we just started we took all the water balloons and started throwing them everywhere at people running by, and we tore up the field. But it was a blast. But at one point I realized, holy moly, I can't find Daniel. Like Daniel's missing. And I look around and I go, oh my gosh, my brain didn't think about how upset this would make you. And we stopped, we took everybody back to the house, and it took us about 30 minutes to sit back and explain kind of what happened, why things went that way before we can get things calmed down. And
because I shut down. I'd shut down.
And I felt so bad. I still feel bad about this day about that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about that.
We actually have pictures of that.
Yeah, that was a fun night.
That was fun. We have pictures
Blue
of that.
versus red.
Yes.
I can't remember. We had different names, but it was interesting. Do you remember what year or what kind of time frame it was that you had your diagnosis from the doctor?
I was 19. I remember specifically in high school, always feeling like I was different from everybody else. But I could never put my finger on it. I was always like, I told my mom, I'm like, there's something wrong and I want to get checked out. Like, what's going on? Like, I need to figure out. But it's funny because I had the mentality that I was normal and everybody else was different. So then when I got diagnosed, I was different and everybody else was normal. It completely flipped the whole thing. And it was hard on me. Because it was super hard on me. Plus going 18 years without ever realizing anything was wrong. But then when I look back now, all my stuff that happened to me in my childhood makes sense. So
yeah, we were at Georgia Highlands when that started happening.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting back and talking with you about that and just kind of going through that little process so I feel like very fortunate and happy and lucky that we kind of got to sit back and kind of talk about that, because it taught me a lot too, which is part of the reason why I think I got into special education for a while too, as a result of really thinking that. You actually did a paper with me when I was at Georgia Highlands as well, which I felt very fortunate that you sat down and we talked and we went through it. And we read a couple books together that you had like, oh yeah, the doctor recommended this, doctor recommended that, and we would sit there and talk about it. So that was pretty cool to kind of get to.
That's when you got your first dive into the enigma that is my mind.
Yeah, it's definitely intriguing. Now, you mentioned some issues in elementary school, middle school, and high school. What are some struggles that you faced going through school?
Bullying mostly, and basically me not understanding that when somebody was mad at me that they were mad at me. Like I would keep forgiving them and come back and keep trying to be their friends, and the kids thought that was weird because they'd beat the hell out of me, and then I'd come back and keep trying to be their friends because I didn't understand, and it was just the social stuff. Like I didn't get the social aspects of body language and the emotions and everything else. I mean, even now as an adult, I still have trouble sometimes knowing if somebody's frustrated or. Because you have to tell me. Like if you don't tell me, I'm completely clueless as to what is going on. So I just think that you're just quiet or you're being nice or just angry about something else, not at me, but just in general. So you have to be upfront and honest with me pretty much 100% of the time. Because if not, it's just going to go completely over my head.
And that could be, in my opinion, a really nice thing at times, but also I can see it being a very frustrating as well, because you genuinely, that's the one part that I love about you the most, is you genuinely always care for people. Like you have always sat back and cared for an individual of kind of what's happening around them. And no matter what, you have the biggest heart. You are going to see somebody on the side of the road and you're going to be like, okay, should we help that person? I'm like, okay, Daniel, I don't know. It's raining. It's pouring. Like it's, remember the Budweiser commercial where the guy's driving in the rain. There's a guy standing off the side of the road that has a machete. And he goes, oh man, like should we stop and help him? Dude, the guy has a machete, but he has Bud Light. it's almost like I feel that way.
You find
sometimes.
The good in people. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been my downfall a couple times, but I mean, for the most part, I try to be a little bit more cautious about it now, but for the most part, I do have a big heart and I like helping people. I feel like I was put on the earth for that. So you definitely are put on this earth to make some big differences. With all these kind of struggles that you're going through, what were some of like therapies or current therapies that you've done in order to help kind of find your way? Basically going to therapy, actually, just basically having a different perspective and being able to, I like to call it fence jumping, where okay. I see the both sides of the fence. I don't sit there and take one person's side because I like to be able to know what they think about something and then do it based on my opinion. And then we kind of meet in the middle kind of thing. So that way I can understand both sides of the situation instead of just, oh, I'm stuck on this way, I'm not going to believe you did. But now if it's out there and it's outrageous, even though I'm a conspiracy theorist, even though if it's outrageous and out there, even for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's back it up. But for the most part, I try to, just learning from therapy, I try to see things from both perspectives. It's made it a lot easier to do stuff, and people despise me for it because I sit there and tell them, well, think about maybe what they're thinking, and no, I don't want to do it, and
But I love that about you too, that you do sit back and you'll listen to both sides. Have you ever done like medications or anything along those lines? Because there's so much stuff out there.
I was on Adderall for a little bit in college at Georgia Highlands back when you and I were going to school together, but that's just because I couldn't focus with my ADHD and then a little bit of OCD. It was just hard for me to focus, and I took it and I got good grades with it, but it made me feel like a zombie. And it was just one of those things where it's like I just didn't like the way it made me feel. And ever since then, I've just kind of just winged it, I guess, because I've not been on any other medications for it since then. And that was 11 years ago. So 11, 12 years ago. So I haven't, pretty much not since then.
Yeah, so. There is positives and negatives with medication for sure. Like I take medication, for me, it really does make that difference for me, and I found one that works.
Yeah.
It took taking 3 or 4 different ones to get there.
Well, I remember when you were going through all that too.
Yeah, it was not fun. I had some rough moments in my life. I will openly, gladly admit that. We've had discussions about that in the past on the podcast, but I haven't gone into major depth. But yeah, like going through and finding medication that works is challenging because some of it can make you feel like a zombie. Yeah. Some of it can make you paranoid. Some of it can make you just feel like you're not yourself any more than you were originally. And it's a hard balance. And with therapies, the more you kind of test the waters and see kind of what's out there, you may find something that works for you.
Yeah.
You may do 10 that suck,
Yeah.
but you may find that one that's like, oh yeah, that one, that guy, that thing. So, and that's coping skills.
Yeah.
Building systems. I have so many systems that I go through in order to help me cope through a day.
Yeah.
And that's something I always try to be open about it as well. Because if the more you're open with an individual about that, the easier it is to make that bond and relationship and them understand what you're kind of going through. Now, how has your family been helpful over the years? Because your mom has been amazing.
Oh yeah, she told me that she always knew that I was different, but she knew that I did good with the schedule, did good with routine. She said she read a lot of books when I was little about different things, but they didn't have a name for it in the 90s. It was just something that was just, I was just a weird kid. It was just, and she knew that I did good with routine, so she tried to make it my life. I had a routine every day and different stuff like that. And she kind of sheltered me a little bit, even into my 20s. It was kind of and I kind of lashed out at her for it. But other than that, my mom's been great. She's like my best friend, and we still hang out till this day and everything else. And she's very aware of me, and even though there still is some problems with her understanding, just because I don't want to say a different lingo, but it's just the way like I said, going back to the way I view the world is just very getting people. I get frustrated sometimes because I try to explain something and I know what I'm trying to say, but it's not coming out the way that they can interpret it to where they understand what I'm trying to say, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it totally does. Communication is a struggle sometimes. That's something that I've always noticed about myself as well. But I can imagine for you of not picking up the social cues at times, and picking up body language can be really challenging at times to interpret what somebody's saying.
Yeah.
And you may, I will say the same thing 13 different times, and it still doesn't make sense. I'm a very wordy person.
Yeah.
So I can see that being confusing to a lot of people kind of around you. But as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Why can you not understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. All the time, not even just with my mom, even with people that I'm friends with or like just meet and I'm talking to, it's hard because you have to be very aware of what you're saying, because you don't want to offend somebody. I mean, it's like you don't want to do that, because even if I did, I wouldn't be aware of it. So that's kind of like
that's a big challenge.
So
yeah, and that definitely goes a long way. Now, sometimes this is something that I noticed, and I'm not sure if you've noticed this over the years, is for a while it was eye contact. For kind of doing like kind of eye contact thing. Was that something that you've struggled with over the years and now kind of learned to kind of like get used to it? Or do you have coping skills that you've kind of learned?
It's just basically just started doing it. Honestly, it was just, I never realized I didn't look at people until you finally realize that you're not looking at people. Like it's one of those
Someone
things.
says something?
Yeah. Like, but now now you and me, like right now, can look at each other and talk and everything else, but that's because I'm comfortable with you. But if I've met you for the first time, I won't look at you. I can still have a conversation with you. I just won't look at you. And it's one of those things that's uncomfortable. I don't know why. It's just one of those that it's almost like a deep personal connection. Like they're looking into your eyes, you know, it's just,
I can see your soul.
I can see my soul. I don't know. But not like but still when I shake people's hands, I don't look at them. Like, even people that I know, I don't do it. It's just, but it's almost become a habit now. And it's just, I just don't break it. It's just become a habit. So
there's nothing wrong with that entirely. Like that's the thing at the end of the day.
Like example, I didn't realize that when I walked at work, I actually had gotten told this, that when I walk, I actually look down at the floor, because it was just that fear of making eye contact with people. It was just something that I naturally did, was looking at the floor. Now I've tried to make it a self-conscious effort to actually look at people and smile or nod or say hey or something like that, because it did for a while look like I just didn't care. I wouldn't try. Not that I didn't. It was just something that I did. It was just a habit, and just out of fear of looking at people in the eye. So,
yeah, that's something that is. We all have little idiosyncrasies. Man, couldn't say that today. We all have our little idiosyncrasies about ourselves that we don't realize until someone points it out. Like, it really doesn't. I didn't realize for a while the way I was walking, I kept having leg issues. Like, man, my leg hurts, or my foot always hurts to it. And then I was doing physical therapy one day, and the person goes, you know, you walk on like the outside of your foot, and that's part of the problem of why you're having leg issues. And I go, oh man, like that's happening because I had this kneecap surgery at one point whenever I was younger, and that's kind of affecting you. So you learn to compensate, and it becomes habit, as you said, it becomes like a habit. And I used to say, apologize all the time. I'm sorry. And that was something that got annoying for people. And you realize, and you start, okay, how can I fix this? What am I kind of doing? Is this really a big deal or not a big deal? That's just part of it. Can you explain to me, you mentioned at one point about facial expressions. Can you explain to me a little bit about not understanding some of the facial expressions? Because that's something that we've talked about before, that it's still a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, the face I like to think can tell so many different stories. As I've gotten older, I pick up on small things now because like I've made it a point to do that. But like before, it was just like you could be mad, but the way I would look at it is that you were mad at something and not me. It was never me. It was always something outside of him. So I would forgive him for that and then just ignore it. So it was just, but it's more just when people don't vocalize is when it's hard to pinpoint stuff. Like if you vocalize, I'm like, oh, okay, that's why you did that. Then that helps me learn. But if you don't say anything, I'm never going to learn, and then it's going to frustrate you, and then it's going to be like,
it leads to a blow up.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've kind of tried to make it a point to notice things, but even now, without actually having somebody sit down and be like, this is what this facial expression means. This is what this facial expression means. If their lip twitches, this is what that means. Like unless I have that, I'm never going to figure out that because everybody's different. So it's like, unless you give me a book about your different idiosyncrasies and twitches and everything else, it's never going to happen. So it's just like, it's one of those things I just have to make it a point to try to get to know somebody. So,
and each person's is different too.
Oh,
that's so challenging.
That's overwhelming sometimes.
And some people, when they use sarcasm in their voices, you can't tell, are you being serious or not being serious? Like where's the line here of communication? That's definitely a challenge there. Now you were saying it's hard for someone for you to tell that you've offended somebody or not. Where does it get to that point where you realize, oh my gosh, I've offended you, I've made you kind of upset?
Usually not until after I walk away from the conversation. Like it's then when I start actually sitting back and thinking, because I go back over everything that I talk about. But I really should be doing it while I'm having the conversation, but I do it afterwards, and then I'm like, I maybe shouldn't have said that. Like, oh my God, like and then I start going to the stage where I start apologizing, going back and apologizing, and then it gets annoying because they don't know what I'm apologizing for. So it's like
the moment's passed.
Yeah, the moment's passed. So they don't know what I'm apologizing for. So it's like, but I know what I'm apologizing for, but they don't. So it's like it's one of those things, and like I said, it's a lot of times it's not until after I've walked away from the conversation. During the conversation, I'm just talking. This
is what we've got. This is where we're going.
This is where we're going. So, and for a while there, it was hard for me to break off of a subject. Like I would get on a subject and then just and then they try to break it apart. And then as soon as they broke it apart, I'd go back to that we'd come back and I'd go back to that same topic again. Not realizing that they're trying to change the subject to something else. I'd keep going back to the same topic over and over again. And then as I got older, I realized, okay, I need to give them a chance to talk and then find something else. But if it's something that excites me, even till this day, I have a tendency to go off on these tangents just about stuff because I'm excited about it. I want people to know. So
yeah, that's the joy of it.
Yeah.
This is a passion of mine. I want to share it with the world.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing and I notice you do this. Our voices raise.
Oh,
and our posture changes.
Excitement.
Yes, it's like, oh gosh, here we go. Yes. How can I steer the conversation back to this?
I know.
Now, at times with that, it comes to sensory overload. Whenever you get to the point where you just get so drained or you get overwhelmed with something, what does that feel like for sensory overload?
Best way I can describe it is your mind can't focus on one singular thought, and it basically gets to the point where your body can't catch up to it. And it's like you sit there, and then the only thing you can pretty much, I mean, this is the way that I've always handled it, but the only thing that you can do is just not say anything. Because you have to let yourself process everything that's going on. And so, and that's what they call shutting down, where your body's basically just like, nope, not doing it anymore. At least for a while, I'm not doing it anymore until I'm able to bring myself back together and be able to form an actual logical thought. Because if you try to talk to an Aspie or somebody on the autism spectrum while they're shutting down, it's going to come out as a lame babble, or just not going to make any sense, or they're going to lash out at you. So it's just going to be one of those. I mean, I do get frustrated sometimes, like, but a lot of times, I mean, with you being my friend, you know it when I shut down, when I'm very,
We've reached the limit.
yeah. And then you'll always make a point to either change the subject, talk to somebody else, and then you'll come back around, and I'm usually, a lot of times I'm good. It's just, for the most part, it's just like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. Nope. Done. Sorry.
Yeah. And sometimes it does, as you said, it takes walking away.
Yeah.
And it takes, realizing that. And that's in the situation where that's confusing to others if they don't know who you are in that range. Especially, I can imagine at work sometimes that can be really frustrating.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. Because if you're communicating with one person and they say one thing, and then all of a sudden another person says another, and you're like, okay, who should I listen to? Who should I not listen to?
Well, it's like on that aspect, like I can't shut down at work because I have to work. And it's one of those things where, like, usually when I shut down, I go off by myself and I pull myself together. I can't do that because I'm in the middle of a thing and I'm in a hospital. So it's like I have to help take care of patients and everything else. So it's like I can't do that. But then my downfall is I get angry and then I start lashing out for no reason. And I don't even know where it's coming from, but it's just because I can't settle down. So I get worked up, and then it's like, so then I have to sit there and like keep thinking, okay, this is why this is happening, all this stuff. And then eventually I can get myself to calm down, but it's just, I do catch myself at work sometimes yelling at people, and it's not because I hate them or I'm mad at them. It's just because I'm frustrated because of myself, because I can't shut down and do my normal stuff. So it's just kind of like,
yeah, work can be a challenging place for anyone because people are coming in and out. It's not the same people
all
sometimes
different
every
directions.
day. Now, how does that in general affected you on going to jobs over the years and changing and finding your space that you're comfortable with?
Well, just off the top, people on the autism spectrum and Aspies don't do well with change. We don't like change because it's not part of our routine. If it's not part of our routine, we don't like it. So it's scary to think of the unknown, the whole not knowing what's going to happen. But I've made it a point to do it where you get to know, try to get to know people. That way you can get comfortable around who you're working with, everything else. And then what I've been doing is literally up front, if we get a new boss or we get a new job or something like that, I tell them right off the top, I have a disability. This is how I act when certain things happen. So it's made my work environment more comfortable because they know, and if they want to try to learn how to handle it, that's fine. But at least I was upfront with them, so that way they know if I act a certain way, this is why it's happening, and it's not because I'm just weird or just, even though I am weird, but it's just
we all are.
but that I'm doing this because I want to do it, or I have Tourette's, or I have something like that. This is why it's happening, because something's triggered me, or something's done this, and this. So it's just, so I'm upfront about it. Not everybody chooses to be that way, and it can scare some people off. I mean,
entirely. I wish we all were more like upfront with people.
Yeah, but I mean, I just want to be upfront with people. I don't want to hide anything. It's just, I just feel like it makes my life easier that way.
Now, does that affect being upfront with people? You said it can scare people off. How's that affected you with like relationships over the years of trying to find a companion? Or we'll go that route first, and then we'll come back to making friends. Okay.
Well, the dating thing has been hard because statistically, people on the autism spectrum, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I think the number was 95% of us won't ever find anybody. But then also at the same time, you got to think about there's some of them that don't want to date at all, period. Anyway, they're not interested in women. They're just interested in what they're interested in. But those of us that do want to date, it's hard because, like I said, we don't understand social cues. We don't understand facial expressions. We don't understand how to interact with people. So it's like the neurotypicals or normal people.
What is normal? That's a whole...
Yeah, exactly. but like the society has made it to the point now where if you don't have a certain type of body, or you don't have a certain type of the way you act, like treating people like crap, or beating up on people, all that other stuff. If you don't do that, you're not going to find anybody. Me being a nice guy that believes in chivalry and all that stuff, for years I refused to believe that nice guys finish last. I was determined to change that narrative, but then the last couple of years, I've really had to take some hits on that thing. Like, it's been very difficult. A lot of the women that I've dated would come into it with an open mind, But then once I started getting comfortable and started becoming who I naturally was and getting into all my quirks and my idiosyncrasies and all the things I was interested in, it would scare them off because they didn't know how to handle it. And it's just one of those things where, or like say, if I'd ask a bunch of questions, because I'm just one, I'm a naturally curious person, but two, I'm trying to understand.
Yes.
So they couldn't stand the fact that I was asking a bunch of questions, and I wasn't doing it to be annoying. I just want to learn. It makes me a better person. It helps me to understand the relationship, to understand how I can better be a better person in the relationship and everything else. And it's been hard. There's been times where I've cried myself to sleep because I can't find somebody. And it's just, I want to be loved like everybody else. I want to get married. I want to love like everybody else. And you just have to find that person that's going to do it. And I'm a naturally impatient person. So it's kind of a hard thing. So
yeah, we all have finding love and finding relationships is so challenging as it is, and it's harder as we get older too, to be able to meet people. And online dating, I bet, is more challenging for you, and not being able, when you're reading a text message or reading something online, it's hard to be able to pick out what the tone is.
Yeah.
What's things that's kind of going in place.
Texting's bad about that too. Like texting, you can't get a grasp of how they're feeling at that time. So it's like, that's why I'd rather talk on the phone or actually meet in person, because even though I still can't understand like body language, I can at least get a read of the conversation. So it's just, and it's like, I get so nervous going into dates because it's like, and it's not because I'm nervous about that person. It's just, I'm nervous about myself because like, can I be open with this person, or can I say this, or this, or can I do this? Like for a long time in the early stages of dating, I was very clingy, was very like wanted to know what they were doing every 5 minutes because I was just interested in them. It was just something I was very excited. I was interested. I wanted to know what they were doing every 5 minutes. Then as I got older, I realized, okay, I need to back off. And then I got to the point where I backed off too much, where I didn't talk to them hardly at all because I thought that's what they wanted. And then realized that ran them off too. So now you have to find that nice balance between everything. And then, but on top of being cheated on and being ghosted and being verbally abused in relationships and stuff like that, it scars you. I mean, it makes it to the point where it gets to the point where you're paranoid all the time because it's like, you don't know. And again, going back to us being scared of change,
yes.
the not knowing is the scary part about a relationship. Not knowing if that person's going to be here 5 months, a year down the road. I mean, that's the thing. And we always ask for reassurance. And when that happens, it's not because we're trying to be annoying. It's because it helps us with our mindset, our mental capacity, everything else. So it's just like, so if you end up dating somebody, man or woman, that has it, just know that we ask for reassurance. We ask a lot of questions because it's the need to know and get better. It's not because we're trying to be annoying.
Yeah, communication is always challenging for anyone. And I can only imagine that's a lot harder for you right now going through
especially
that.
The older I get. It's just very...
We get our routines and we get our stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
We've had conversations in the past about this, and I'm curious to see if there's anything new, or I want you to bring in the old stuff as well. What are some books, TV shows, movies that you recommend to people that actually help people understand more about the autism spectrum? Yeah,
well, TV shows and movies. I remember one back in the early 2000s called Adam. It's just called Adam. And I can't remember who the actors were in it. I think Rose Byrne was in it. She was the female in it. But it's a guy that's on the spectrum, doesn't realize he loves this woman, doesn't realize that she knows he has it, but then he just starts doing things where he ends up running her off at some point and stuff like that. And then you've got the shows, Atypical is really good. It's a series. And then you have Love on the Spectrum, which I absolutely love. It's about people with Asperger's and autism and stuff trying to date. And it follows the lives of 5 or 10 of them and them trying to date. And some of them even going on in their 20s and 30s, going on their very first dates. Never even been on one. Don't even know how to act and stuff like that. And it was hard to watch at first because you start seeing yourself in a lot of those kids, and it's almost like
that's
and it's almost like I've done that before, and then it's like it's embarrassing. But then at the same time, you're happy for them because you want them to experience the joy of finding somebody and everything else. So it's a very double-edged sword when it comes to that whole whole aspect of that whole thing. Like you want them to be happy, but at the same time you're kind of awkward because it's like, I've done that before, and it's like now you're having flashbacks of the situation that you did it in, and it's like
that could be rough. Yeah. Has there's on the other end of the spectrum, has there been any that have been, wow, that's really off, or that's really bad, that does a poor job for that?
Not necessarily the story wise, but just the acting.
Okay.
Like there's been several where the acting is like, okay, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Or you're mixing two different disorders into one and trying to pass it off as autism or Asperger, which and off the top of my head, I can't remember what they are right now, but I know of a couple instances where I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense, because it's like, that's not something that we would do, or that's not something that, and then on the grand scheme of things, everybody's different. I understand that. Like we all have our own different tics and everything else, but there are some things out there that's a little bit outrageous. So
yeah, that's unfortunate with there's always those stereotypes that people build around others, and it really can be extremely negative because they put it out there, and because people go, oh, that's what I expect whenever I meet somebody like this, and that's I always hate whenever I see that. And that's a struggle to find where that line is in order to make sure that you're properly representing somebody. And I respect when an actor or a playwright or a director sits down and really does the proper research. It goes a long way. Over the years, you mentioned like with therapies and doctors and stuff kind of going and doing this stuff. Are there any programs or supports that you've used over the years that you want to recommend to people?
Join a group, basically an autism or Asperger's group. Join a group, meet kids or adults or whoever with the same thing. Not only does it help you understand yourself better, but it also helps you to be around people that you know you can be yourself around, because it's like they're comfortable with you and it doesn't matter. Like it's one of those things, like for instance, Dragon Con. I go for two reasons. One, because I have fun, but two, because I can be my total 100% self because nobody cares.
Yeah, and that's an amazing place.
And that is the best feeling in the world. Being able to be myself, do my different impersonations and impressions and my little tics and me just saying random movie lines for no reason and talking to myself. I can do all that because I don't have to go out into the real world and put on a face to be classified as, quotations, normal, and I can just be myself, and it's great. And I get that around you guys. Like when I'm around y'all, I'm my 100% self because I'm comfortable with y'all.
Yeah. Shout out to the night crawlers. You know who you are. Those are always, it's good to have your people.
Yeah.
It's always good to have your people and having that place to go to, and something like, how many years in a row have you been going now to?
Since 2012. I've been going, and the first year I went was in a week's notice. So, and then ever since then, like clockwork, I've been going, and I look forward to it every year. It's pretty much the only vacation I take every year. So, and it's pretty much the only reason I work is to save money just to go there.
Because it can pile up. It can get expensive. So, but if you love it, do it. That's the thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like another one of our passions that we have is we love talking professional wrestling. Oh yeah, we do. I'm hoping to have you back on later when we get into I'm going to do a roundtable discussion.
Nice.
With everybody that's kind of within the group, and it may be like 5-10 people.
I'm down.
And I got a microphone that I'm going to set up, and we'll
kind
of go through. That's going to be fun. Now, if someone wanted to be a good ally within the community of, say, that they see someone that's new working within the department or that wants to kind of get involved, do you have any recommendations for people?
Oh, biggest thing I would have to say, the two biggest things I have to say is understanding and acceptance. That's the biggest thing to help us out, is understanding and acceptance. Just, we want friends, we want to make friends, we want to do all that other stuff. And go help out. Like if there's groups like autism awareness stuff, go help out, go on walks, do all the different things to try to reach out. Excuse me. And research. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like even women, if you're getting in a relationship with somebody that has autism, research it. Understand. Take the time to understand. It would help us out so much more than you could ever imagine. Same thing, because that's the same thing we do with y'all. We try to understand. We research everything, and it's like because we have that constant need to learn, and it's just, and want to be better and want to do things and everything else, and even though we view the world different, doesn't mean that we can't do it. We're not capable. I mean, it's just, but I definitely would say that the two biggest things are understanding and acceptance. That's the biggest, because we just want to be part of society.
Yeah, right on.
So,
we all do.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that with us. Are there some things that I haven't covered that you would like to discuss or put out there?
Not that I can think of. I mean, at least not at the time.
It'll come to you at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, no, I was sitting in my bed. Hey, this is what he should have said. But no, like, I think we've pretty much covered every basis. I just would like to reiterate the fact that we're just like normal people. I mean, it's just we may view the world different. We may do things that aren't up to your standards, but we're just going through life like everybody else, just trying to find our way, and just we need people there along the way to help us. I mean, it's just, in your group and you and the group will never know how much you guys have helped me. I mean, it's really, because before I met you, Kate, I was lost. I mean, I really was. I just lost my best friend in a car accident. And,
yeah, that was rough hearing about that.
And I had nobody, and it was just, I was floating through like Forrest Gump says, it's floating through life real subtle, like on a breeze. And
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's a good one.
So, and I was just doing that, and it was just, and then all of a sudden, Cade came into my life like a damn hurricane, and just took took it, and just introduced me to this group of 16 other people, and it was just like, and they all accepted me for who I was, and it was the greatest feeling in the world, and they'll always be my family, and I'll always do anything in the world for them, and everything else. It's just the most amazing feeling in the world, and I hope everybody else with autism can find that. They can find that group that lets them be themselves and lets them grow as a person and helps them to understand things, and it's just and are understanding and accepting. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It always comes back to that.
Yeah, I love you, dude.
Yeah.
That's the thing at the end of the day. I love you.
Yeah, I love you too, man.
And I feel like a lot of the times we don't fully, we think about that as being only to be said like in relationships, like that you're dating somebody. No, that could be, you could love, like you love your dog.
Yeah.
Like you love your like favorite cup of tea,
Yeah.
or things like that. Why not share if you love somebody and that you really care for them? That can be a word that can be used if you truly mean it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Now, are there any last minute things that you would just in general, like words of wisdom or just general fun knowledge that you would like to share with the world?
Fun knowledge. Basically, just we have our hyper focuses. If you end up finding somebody that you end up touching on a topic, we light up. Like, it's one of those things. We light up, and then it gets to the point where we go off on these rants. Just let us go off on our rants, honestly, because we will eventually get to the point where we ask you about, like, what do you think about it? But it may take like 15 minutes, but we're going to get to the point where we actually ask you like what you think and everything else. But just basically, just like I said, be accepting and touching on this. And this is kind of like out of left field. I don't even know where it came from.
I love it.
But I was in a group for a while where it was like a the parents of kids with autism would meet, and then the kids would all meet together in the same room. Well, I would go to try to make friends and try to meet other kids. Well, because I was the most high functioning in the group, and high functioning means that I was able to have conversations and do all that other stuff. But like, so the parents would pull me off to the side and be like, well, how do you drive? How do you do all these different things? And how do you socially interact and do all this other stuff? I said, because I wanted to. Your kid, and they're asking, well, how do I get my son or daughter to do it? I'm like, they have to want to do it. That's the biggest thing. You can't force them into doing it. Like I technically shouldn't be driving a car. I mean, honestly, because of my disability, I shouldn't be driving a car because of my ADHD and all that other stuff and everything else. But I didn't want to go to college and have my mom drop me off every day at college and be embarrassed about it and just all this different stuff. And I wanted to do it. And it's just one of those things where it's like everything that I've done and grown because I wanted to get better. I wanted to be and it's also helped me discover myself, to figure out who I really am as a person. For a long time, I was lost and especially after I got diagnosed, I didn't want to believe that I was. So it was kind of like I was kind of in a denial, and I was really kind of just depressed and really just didn't care. And then as I got older, in my late 20s and in my early 30s, I woke up and I'm proud to be this now. Like, I'm proud to have autism. I'm proud to be a advocate and a role model and everything else, or whatever I choose to be, because it's who I am as a person. I've figured myself out now, and I love who I am. And it's it's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are hard days. There are very hard days, or there's days where I regress and stuff like that. But I have my coping mechanisms. I have my things that do it. Like my coping mechanisms are music and video games. I can immerse myself into those worlds, get away from the world for a while. And then once I'm calmed down and once I've worked out my day, I come back to the real world and I'm fine. And I can do whatever I need to do. But I go to those, and people never understood why I play video games so much. It's because I was working out my day or I'm working out my issues on the video game. I'll come back to you. It's just going to be an hour or 2 hours or however long it takes. I'll come back to you. But yeah, I just want the world to know that we're just people. It's that simple. We're just people. We just don't see it the same way as everybody else, but we're just people.
I love it. That was awesome.
Yeah.
This conversation has been amazing to sit back and do this. And
I enjoy talking about it now. I used to not, but I enjoy talking about it now. So.
And I'm glad that you were willing to come on and share this with the audience. Is who knows who this could reach?
Yeah, because I want people to know. I mean, I want people to know that we're all looking for people. And it's just we're all looking for friends, all looking for that security, I guess you could say.
If you would like someone to reach out, do you have an email perhaps that they could reach out to you? Or do you want them to go through me? And
go through you. It's easier because it would be a little overwhelming. Everybody trying to come at me at one time and all that stuff. And I'd be like, I don't know who to respond to first. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I'll filter through them. Send me an email.
Yeah.
And what I'll do, I'll give you that information here.
You have my Facebook too. So so that works. We can do that.
And I'll pass that on. I'll filter it. So if there's any crazies, I'll make sure they don't get to you.
Especially the women, I tell you.
Jump it through. You never know.
Beat them off with a stick.
You may find your love through this. You never can tell.
I hope so.
But my information, if you want to reach out to me, my email is Cade, which is spelled CADE, at learningfromfriends.com. And you can reach me on Twitter. You can reach me on Facebook, Learning From Friends. I have a Patreon page if you would like to reach out and donate. $1, $5, $10, $1,000. May I dare ask for $1 million? I will gladly take whatever.
Dream
you're
big.
willing. If you don't ask, you don't know. That's the thing at the end of the day. So yeah, that's really what I've got for you today. And I'm hoping that you've enjoyed this and you go back and listen to other episodes. And if this one's not for you, that's fine. If this one was for you, let me know. Leave a comment, share with a friend. Enjoy this, because that's the one thing we have here is you have your friends, you have a community to learn from. Get out and talk. That's the cool thing at the end of the day. Get out and talk.
Communication.
That is the biggest thing that you have. You have a limited amount of time on this earth, and that is the best gift you can give somebody, is your time. Before we leave, as you all know, this lovely sign-off that I have is my name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide in this lovely adventure that I like to call Learning From Friends. And most of all, before you leave, don't forget to let your curiosity fly high.